Coming up in our newscast tonight, President Moon Jae-in shares his views on the upcoming Pyongyang-Washington summit during his cabinet meeting. He anticipates the event will be a turning point in efforts towards denuclearization and peace. Finally, Seoul and Washington reach an agreement on sharing defense costs. A one-year deal requires South Korea to pay around $924 million for the operation of U.S. troops on the peninsula. The government completes its review of cutting red tapes under the regulatory sandbox program. Among the first to benefit from the project is Hyundai Motor, allowed to install hydrogen charging stations in select locations. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. President Moon Jae-in highlighted the importance of the upcoming North Korea-U.S. summit. He believes it will be a step forward on the path to denuclearization. Shin Se-min starts us off from the nation's top office.
High anticipation for the upcoming big summit between leaders Kim Jong-un of North Korea and Donald Trump of the U.S. Speaking to his secretaries and aides during a weekly meeting, the South Korean president said the second Kim-Trump summit will be a major turning point in pursuing the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and establishing peace in the region. He said the high-stakes meeting set for February 27th and 28th in Vietnam will also open the door for the divided Koreas to upgrade their ties.
이미 큰 원칙에 합의한 한반도의 완전한 비핵화, 새로운 북미 관계, 한반도 평화 체제를 보다 구체적이고 가시적으로 진전시키는 중대한 전환점이 될 것이라고 기대합니다.
Welcoming the second summit between the once greatest of foes, President Moon was confident that their meeting in Hanoi will move the needle closer to denuclearization.
우리가 지금 불과 1년 전까지만 해도 상상하기 어려웠던 변화의 한가운데 있는 것은 결코 우연이 아닙니다. 평화가 옳은 길이고 우리의 의지가 그 길과 만났기 때문에 가능한 일이었습니다.
The second summit, the president said, will bring the parties a step closer to peace and an end to confrontation. And to keep up the momentum, he also promised his government will do its utmost to keep the dialogue going between Seoul, Pyongyang, and Washington. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Staying with the second Pyongyang-Washington summit slated for later this month in Hanoi. To work towards reaching a deal on denuclearization, the two sides are set to hold additional talks. Park Hee-jun zooms in on the discussions expected to help them inch closer to an agreement.
With only 2 weeks remaining until the second North Korea-U.S. summit, a key question remains. Will North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump forge a deal that can satisfy both sides? North Korea and the U.S. are searching for a balance between what Pyongyang should do to fulfill its commitments toward denuclearization and what Washington should offer in return. Dismantling and verifying the North's Yeongbyeon Nuclear Complex will be the priority, as it's a key facility that produces both plutonium and uranium, two essential materials for making nuclear weapons. Kim mentioned it in the Pyongyang Joint Declaration last September. U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun also recently said at Stanford University that Kim pledged to shut it down. And ideal concessions from the U.S. could involve declaring an end to the Korean War and setting up a liaison office in Pyongyang. North Korea has also been demanding sanctions relief, but that would likely require a bolder step than destroying the Yeongbyeon complex. These were among the issues discussed in Pyongyang last week by Biegun and its North Korean counterpart, Kim Hyok-chol. The two sides are scheduled to continue their working-level negotiations in a third Asian country next week. Their second round of talks should help lay the groundwork for the two leaders' joint statements and determine whether the second summit has more substance than the first. According to the Blue House, South Korean President Moon Jae-in is also expected to discuss a summit with President Trump, likely over the phone next week. How President Moon mediates between the two sides will also be an important variable that could determine the success of the upcoming Vietnam summit. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Vietnam's top diplomat is expected to arrive in North Korea on February 12th for a three-day visit. In a tweet on Monday, the Vietnamese Foreign Ministry announced that Foreign Minister Pham Binh Minh's visit comes at the invitation of his North Korean counterpart, Lee Yong-ho. Details of the meeting between the two top diplomats have not been disclosed, but speculations are that they will likely discuss details regarding the upcoming summit between Pyongyang and Washington, which has been confirmed to take place in Hanoi on February 27th and the 28th. After many rounds of negotiations, Seoul and Washington finally inked a defense cost-sharing deal on Sunday. South Korea increased its financial contribution for this year. Park Ji-won breaks down the digits for us.
Under this year's Special Measures Agreement, or SMA, Seoul's financial contribution for some 28,000 U.S. forces stationed on the Korean Peninsula will be around $924 million. That money will be spent mainly in three areas: facility construction, payroll for South Korean employees, and logistics support. But it's not yet been decided how the money will be assigned to these items. They will be determined according to procedures agreed upon by the two countries in their New Deal, and South Korea's Defense Ministry and U.S. Forces Korea will have further consultations to set the exact amounts. Last year, South Korea contributed around $850 million. More than 46% of the money was spent on military construction, followed by nearly 40% on the salaries of South Korean employees, and lastly 15% on military logistics support. Local military experts say they think the proportion of each budget item won't change much from last year. Seoul and Washington signed their first SMA back in 1991 to guarantee and support a stable American force on the peninsula by sharing some of the costs. And under the SMA, South Korea pays for its nationals working at U.S. military bases in the country, as well as costs related to facility construction and logistics. However, during last year's many rounds of talks, the U.S. had asked South Korea to pay for the operation of strategic assets as well. Seoul said those do not fall under the original scope of the Allies' cost-sharing agreements, and the 2019 plan does not include them. The two countries also had long disputed how much South Korea should contribute in total. A military expert in Seoul proposes that rather than settling on the total amount first, the two countries should start negotiating on budget subcategories and then add those up to make a final amount.
I think the two countries need to be more specific about each budget item. For example, they need to discuss which categories should be paid for by Seoul alone, which items should be divided between them, and which should be solely paid for by the U.S. That way, they can settle on a reasonable total cost.
In fact, both sides have agreed to set up a regular consultation they are calling a working group, in which they will discuss ways to improve their cost sharing. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The government is set to cut red tapes after reviewing business cases under the regulatory sandbox program. This process is looked to serve as a test bed to help the industrial sector develop new, innovative products and services. Kim Ji-yeon turns the spotlight to some of the initial beneficiaries of this project.
The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said Monday it held its first review of new business models that are subject to a regulatory sandbox, or the mechanism aimed at keeping up with the fast pace of innovation by offering regulatory waivers for product and service testing during a set time period. One of the four cases that were reviewed and given the green light was submitted by Korea's biggest automaker, HeungMin. The company aimed at the installation of hydrogen charging stations, which was previously limited due to municipal regulations. Among the 5 locations requested by Hyundai for the installation of the charging stations, 4 that have been granted approval are located in downtown Seoul, including one in the National Assembly, and they were approved for the benefit of the public.
Up until now, regulations have limited the building of gas facilities near industrial and residential areas. There's a requirement of designating a charging site that's more than 3,000 square meters in the city building process, as well as the limitation in the use of charging stations in public properties that are not related to public services.
Other cases involve the genomic profiling of individuals in order to prevent degenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease, as well as the installation of LCD and LED panels on the exterior of buses for advertisements. The latter involves the use of outlets in charging electric vehicles, in which consumers would pay for the amount of electricity used to charge their EVs, based on a smartphone app. The regulatory measures that were given the green light at Monday's meeting are limited to the specific companies that have applied for them for a period of 2 years. In the meantime, the ministry says it'll work on amending the country's regulations so that more companies can benefit from such deregulatory measures. The ministry says the next such meeting to review business cases for the implementation of the regulatory sandbox will be held later this month. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Latest data show the inventory to sales ratio of South Korean manufacturers has hit the highest point in 2 decades. It's seen as another clear indicator of the country's slowing economy. Kim Hae-sung explains further.
South Korea's manufacturing sector inventory to sales ratio for December recorded 116%, marking the highest level since September 1998. A rising ratio means a faster buildup in inventories than goods sold, usually indicating a slowing economy. Data from Statistics Korea show the ratio has been spiking since late last year. After hitting around 107% in October, it soared past 111% in November.
The higher ratio signals a slowing economy and even recession. As inventories grow, companies start producing less. Investment shrinks further, leading to an economic contraction. In particular, auto and semiconductor sales have been falling in recent months, mainly due to sluggish exports and the slowing Chinese economy.
South Korea's manufacturing sector factory operating rate recorded 73% in December, the lowest level in 8 months. As for Korean automakers, shipments plunged 7% on month in December, while their combined inventory ratio rose 6.5%. Semiconductor shipments dropped 5%, while their warehouse stock rose 4%. Shipments of primary metals, including steel, fell 2.5%, while inventory jumped more than 3%. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Shinhan Financial Group is partnering with fintech company TOS to create a new internet-only bank. Next month, the consortium will apply to the Financial Services Commission for a preliminary license. Once established, it will be the third internet-only bank in the nation, following KakaoBank and K-Bank. In its statement, Shinhan pointed out the partnership will help boost innovation in the local finance industry. TOS, created in 2015, is a fintech company with more than 10 million registered users as of early February. The world's first checkout-free grocery store opened to the public in the U.S. last year, and it received positive reviews. Some experts say that more of these kinds of stores will pop up over the next few years. Seo Bo-bin tells us more.
E-commerce giant Amazon opened its first Amazon Go automated store about a year ago in its hometown, Seattle. Currently, it has about 10 stores across the U.S. Amazon Go is a new way of grocery shopping where customers just walk in, pick the groceries that they need, and simply walk out. Different from any other stores, Amazon Go doesn't have shopping carts, but instead, customers put the items directly into the bag they brought with them. To use the store, people must be logged into the Amazon Go application. As customers leave the store with the items they need, Amazon charges their account. This system allows people to shop with convenience and speed. This whole system works through advanced technology and AI, where hundreds of cameras on the ceiling track every move and every item the customer grabs. Although such stores are still in the early stages, a lot of businesses are coming up with advanced technology which could change the environment of offline distribution channels. Experts are saying that such automated stores will become common in the near future.
I think within 10 years from now, it will be very common. And in fact, maybe a little bit weird to go to a store that doesn't have autonomous checkout.
However, there are still issues that need to be solved. There are concerns that with more automated stores, there will be a decline in jobs, and although automated stores will increase, how long it takes for them to become commonplace depends on the time it takes for technology to run the stores without any problems. Seo Bo-bin, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, South Korea's former Supreme Court Chief Yang Seung-tae is indicted on 47 charges, most of which are related to abuse of power. He is the first top-level officials in the nation's judiciary, sitting or former, to ever be indicted. For details, let's turn to our Choi Seong.
The Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office handed over former Supreme Court Chief Justice Yang Seung-tae to the court on Monday. He is facing 47 charges, including interfering in highly sensitive trials, like the ones related to Japan's use of Korean forced labor during World War II, to achieve his long-envisioned plan of establishing a separate court of appeals and creating a blacklist of judges who opposed his plan. He is also accused of illegally securing records of judges' deliberations at the Constitutional Court of Korea, an independent high court that rules on constitutional issues. The prosecutors suspect that Yang used those records to prevent them from ruling contrary to Supreme Court precedent. Yang is also accused of creating slush funds during his tenure. By the end of this month, prosecutors plan to carry out additional investigations to indict other former and sitting judges involved in the power abuse scandal during Yang's leadership of the judiciary, which should wrap up their 8-month probe. 2 other former Supreme Court justices, Park Byung-dae and Ko Young-han, have been indicted as Yang's accomplices. They face 33 and 18 charges, respectively. Choi Seong, Arirang News.
More and more South Koreans are spending time on cultural and arts programs. Closer look reveals the frequency of attending such events is still closely linked to household income. Kim Mo-kyun has the full story.
The number of Koreans attending cultural and arts events has risen dramatically in recent years, with the figure surpassing 80% of the population for the first time last year. According to a survey released by the Culture Ministry on Monday, the rate of public attendance at such events peaked at a high of 82% over the one-year period from August 2017 to July 2018, rising more than 3 percentage points on year and some 16% since 2006. The frequency of visits to cultural and arts events also increased to an average of 5.6 times a year from 5.3 times in 2016. Movies had the highest attendance rate with 76%. Next were music and art performances with 21%, followed by art exhibitions. By age, people in their 20s had the highest attendance rate, followed by those in their teens and 30s. When it comes to income, the ratio between household income and attendance for cultural events remained proportional. Households with a monthly income higher than $4,500 had attendance rates higher than 90%, while the figure dropped to 43% for those who earn less than $890 a month. The ministry said that it plans to create more opportunities for everyone to enjoy cultural events by increasing cultural subsidies for low-income households and by creating more social infrastructure in the sector. The survey was conducted on more than 10,000 people aged about 15 years old nationwide from October to November last year. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Another historic accomplishment for global K-pop sensation BTS. The group attended the 2019 Grammy Awards as presenters, becoming the first Korean artist to be a part of the prestigious music event. Lee Min-sun reports.
K-pop sensations BTS have become the first Korean artist to present an award at the U.S. Grammy Awards, the top U.S. music awards ceremony. They presented the Best R&B Album of the Year award to American singer Her for her self-titled album at the 61st Grammy Awards ceremony on Sunday local time. BTS were dressed in customized black tuxedos designed by Korean designers J.B. Couture and Kim Seol-young. The boy band described it as a dream-come-true moment for them to be at the event and didn't forget to thank their fans' army for their support. The group also pledged they would come back next year. Social media went viral with fans celebrating the group's historic achievement. Although BTS were nominated for any awards themselves, the designers of the group's album Love Yourself Tear were nominated for Best Recording Package, but they didn't win the award. Meanwhile, the Best New Artist award went to Dua Lipa, and Childish Gambino won both the Song of the Year and Best Music Video awards with the song This Is America. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
Turning to the world of sports now, Tottenham Hotspur's Heung-min scorched the net for the 3rd game in a row with his 15th goal of the season on Sunday. The South Korean striker scored in injury time to complete a 3-1 win for his squad against Leicester City at London's Wembley Stadium. Tottenham is now third in the league with 60 points, 5 behind Manchester City and Liverpool in the title race. In recent weeks, South Korea's fine dust levels reach fresh peaks. The government is putting into effect new emergency measures to tackle the pollution. Lee Seung-jae outlines what they are.
Until now, measures to reduce fine dust levels have only been introduced in Seoul and its surrounding areas. On top of that, such measures were only mandatory for the public sector. However, starting Friday, anti-pollution measures will now be enforced in all 17 cities and provinces nationwide. The emergency measures will be issued if one of 3 criteria is met, including when fine dust levels exceed 50 micrograms for 2 consecutive days. When the measures are triggered, older diesel cars that weigh 2.5 tons or more will be banned from operating between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. Also, while the alternate no driving day was only previously implemented on just a public sector, the new emergency measures will cover every vehicle owner in the country, not just civil servants. In addition, schools will either slash class times or close altogether when fine dust levels are deemed too high. Experts have found that past emergency measures caused fine dust levels in South Korea to drop by almost 5%. South Korea's Environment Ministry says it expects the latest move to be twice as effective as the previous measures. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
PyeongChang, where the Winter Games that set the tone for reconciliation of the two Koreas was held, played host to a special global forum. For 3 days, experts from around the world held discussions and agreed on the importance of all related governments and civil actors taking steps to keep the peace process going beyond the peninsula. Won Jung-hwan has the highlights from that meeting.
A sustainable future and the end of the Korean War are the two of the key actions the PyeongChang Declaration for Peace 2019 is pushing for. The declaration calls for a number of action plans, including for all governments to increase their commitment to support and enforce international disarmament laws, the two Koreas to bring the Korean War to an end, and to craft peace and cooperation in the region, and the UN to fully implement resolutions concerning preventing violations of women's rights. The forum was held to mark the anniversary of the Winter Olympics by building on its legacy. PyeongChang 2018 was praised for its role in the process towards peace on the divided Korean peninsula thanks to North Korea's participation in the global sporting event. The momentum started by PyeongChang 2018 led to talks at all levels with North Korea, including the Inter-Korean Summits and the North Korea-US Summit, thawing their strained relationships through the power of sports. To build on that legacy, participants from around the world have spent the last 3 days engaging in the in-depth discussions in their related fields with the goal of helping build peace. The 2019 PyeongChang Global Peace Forum was composed of 6 sessions, including disarmament, poverty, gender, and human rights. Global participants actively shared their experiences and discussed common issues and challenges, which will become part of the framework of the PyeongChang Agenda for Peace 2030. The forum ended on Monday, but the platform will serve as an invitation to a larger audience of peacemakers from around the world to engage with over the coming year, with an aim of coming up with an official agenda when they meet again next year. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News, PyeongChang.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you'll need. Michelle, the cold spell that has us shivering for 4 straight days has finally started to dwindle somewhat.
Yes, Daniel, and at least for the time being, we won't have a cold snap or even extreme cold conditions. Now, tomorrow's temperature will be higher than today, bouncing back to the seasonal average levels. And at the same time, though, Beijing still faces freezing conditions under very cloudy skies. Now, although we have a rest from the cold waves, it's now time to deal with more dust pollution. Now, practically the whole country will be under toxic levels of air pollution tomorrow, so grab your mask on your way out. Now, Seoul will wake up to -4 degrees Celsius tomorrow, while Chuncheon will feel twice as cold as Seoul. and the highs will rise 2 to 4 degrees more than today. Southern areas even peaking at around 8 or 9 degrees. And Wednesday and Thursday morning will be in general cold but remains within the average, but dry conditions will intensify until Friday when some nationwide precipitation is expected to hit the peninsula. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you on tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for watching wherever you may be tuning in from.